Welcome back, everyone, to the AlexAndMo I'm a PT podcast. And Alex is back with us tonight, relaxed, refreshed, rejuvenated after his family vacation. I'm smiling because I got some great news today, which we'll probably share later on in the podcast. But he and I are both grateful that we have Dr. Mica Mitchell of at Creatively Meek on Twitter. You can also follow her personal page on with us tonight, and we are going to be talking about the importance of being mindful as healthcare clinicians. Again, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. We thank all of you who have subscribed so far. And we are also now on Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcasts. And don't forget to check out our website. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. So, welcome back, Alex, and welcome, Mika.
Thank
Yeah, it's good to be back.
you.
It's good to be back. Got a week off to recharge, refresh, celebrate my youngest, Nikki's birthday. So it was a good week. I was telling Mo, I'm looking forward to the days where we can just do this podcast and I'll be by the pool and just hanging out full time. But definitely good to be back. Excited for tonight and having Mica with us, Dr. Mitchell. And then last week was a great conversation. I caught bits and pieces of it. Obviously, a much needed conversation. So if you haven't checked that episode out, please do. As Mo said, subscribe, follow us, so you can keep up with everything exciting that we got going on. But thank you, Dr. Mitchell, for taking time out. Both you and I had to get our kids ready for bed, so I'm all familiar with that process. So thank you for
Yes.
taking time out to be with us.
Yes, thank you for the invite. I got it. The invitation. I was like, yes, absolutely. When? So I'm happy to be here.
Awesome,
Yes,
awesome.
yes, yes. So we've had some sit downs when we've met at conferences, and I've enjoyed our conversations. I definitely have benefited from not only hearing what you have to share, but even the nonverbal communications on how you actually would, sit down at eye level to make sure people are comfortable with receiving what you have to say and you being receptive to what the other person has to say. And the calmness that you display when you're having conversations, it's something that I have been generally focused on improving when I'm having conversations now with people to listen with intent. Um, Far too many of us, when we hear, we don't listen. We just hear to give a quick retort. And I remember that was something you said when we were at dinner one evening. And I was like, she's absolutely correct. So I had to pinch myself and catch myself like, am I really one of those people that just hear it just to talk or hear myself talk and not listen with intent and respond accordingly? So I do admire that about you. So thank you.
Thank you, Mo. Wow. I'm like, wait, you got all of that for those interactions? Wow.
Oh
Wow.
yeah, I've been paying attention.
That is awesome. But yeah, and it's, what I wanted to say up front on this podcast is I am a work in progress. Like we are all works in progress, so it's something that we keep working toward, right? And I think ultimately how you set your intention makes such a difference, because you could have an idea of what you want, but if it's not truly like, this is what I am wanting to put out in the world and wanting the world to receive, then sometimes it gets lost.
Definitely.
Absolutely. So take me back to how creatively Meek came to be. Like what was the process to when you first thought of this and how you decided to kind of put, thoughts and words into action?
That's a great question. And we're going to go back. So, if on my Instagram account, if you go back and look when it was created a long, long time ago. One day I was just like, something about this name resonated with me because, doing mindfulness and just finding time for creative outlet and space. That's kind of where it was like, oh, creatively Meek, and a play on my name because my name is Mica. And sometimes I have to emphasize the Meek because people will say Mica if they see my name first before they get to know me, which, a simple correction, it's Mica, and we move forward. But so that's kind of where that play on words with the creative side of who I am in Meek, and just really yielding and leaning into it, because we get so caught up sometimes into our occupation and our profession. I am a physical therapist, right? Like when you lead, like, oh, what do you do? I'm a physical therapist. And then sometimes that can be all consuming in who we are. And, the topic that we're going to bring up, I saw your post about burnout and about compassion fatigue. Sometimes we take on this, we are the PT, and forget that there's so many other things about us that bring us joy, and actually the stepping away from it, be what it is you do every day, makes what you do every day even better. And so it really is my time, my creative outlet. It is where I can be, I have so many ideas for what Creatively Meek will, produce. But right now, the focus is mindfulness and mindfulness exercises. And where that started was my son, my oldest is 12, and we started doing some mindfulness exercises together. And I don't know how much it helped him. I believe it helped him, but I did it with him because, he just needed some time to center and get his emotions together, right? As we're growing, we all need to be able to handle these big emotions that we have. But then not ever thinking that this was for me, I was like, wait, I found myself doing some of those breathing exercises and feeling different. And I'm like, wait, could it be the mindfulness exercises? Let me, and let me be more consistent with it for myself. And so from there, I saw the value of it. And then, how we came to just me then facilitating mindfulness exercises. So fast forward a couple of years, not time, I lost time during the pandemic. It wasn't last year. So in 2020, at the height of the pandemic, or really at the start of the pandemic, but right when George Floyd was murdered, there was this collective tension, right? Nobody could leave their house. We were constantly seeing these images of this murder and just racial tensions. There was just so much going on. And I knew I was struggling. It was a lot to handle as a PT, already, with my skill set, but being an educator, being with students, I'm like, how are our students handling this? They're like, we're asking them to deal with the pandemic, deal with this, all of this, the understanding and the realization of the murder of George Floyd without really addressing it or providing an outlet for this release. And so my wonderful friend, colleague, Dr. Lisa Van Hoos, I said to her, I was like, what can we do? Like, how can we support the students? How can we hold space for them? And so it was like, let's host some Zoom meetings. Let's, come around some topics around mindfulness. And then it just evolved into, let me customize some mindfulness exercises. Let's create mindfulness content around topics. And let's continue this community that we started then. That has just, it's beautiful to see where the students that started with us that are now have graduated or about to graduate, still in PT school and other health profession schools, but just how all of that birthed this beautiful community.
Now, for some of us who may not know or fully understand it, myself included, describe, when you say mindfulness exercises, what is that? Like, what does that look like? What does that involve? For me, like, I think when you say mindfulness, I think, meditating, which for myself, and I tweeted this a while back, like, I find it hard sometimes just to quiet my mind, to be able to focus on whatever, at that point in the meditation. I personally, I know Mo uses the Peloton meditation. I use those as well. But yeah, like it's hard. It's not something where you're just like, oh, let me just, set the mood in the room with the lights and whatever the case may be, and this just works. Like it is an exercise, just like when we think of working out or doing things like that. But is it that, or is there more to it? Is, what is it really?
Yeah. So the beauty is it is similar to exercise. It's something that with practice you get better at it. With practice you can actually stay engaged the entire time, whatever that amount of time is. But sometimes it's, we start off, and I'm going to give you a definition, my definition of what mindfulness is, and then I'm going to kind of break it down into like what these exercises look like. But it's a practice. And it's okay to give yourself grace to say, you know what, I went and I pressed play on this mindfulness exercise, and it was not hitting what the kids say. It was not slapping. It was not working for me, and that's okay. Like, you have to try it again. And so what mindfulness is this present awareness. It's different than meditation. So you're aware, like you're not trying to silence your mind. You are giving full acknowledgement to everything or anything that's going on around you. Where we use our senses, you can really focus in on your different senses one at a time, take it all in at the same time. But through that present awareness, that you then hold non-judgment for what's going on, right? So we're fully acknowledging what's happening around us. We're not going to say, oh, no, that's not there, or that's not. No, like, oh, I see it. I see that. I see that. Oh, yep. I hear that. I feel that. And just being aware of your surroundings. And so what these mindfulness exercises are, it's a guided meditation, but not in the sense of stillness, calmness, empty your brain of every thought. Like that, to me, I don't know that I could do that, because I'd be like, wait, there's another thought. Oh, wait, there's another thought.
And that's exactly how I at times can be. It's like, focus on this, and I'm like, whoa, I got things coming left and right. Like, how do I stop these?
Right. You're like, I need the traffic controller to be like, whoa, exactly. Hold up, hold tight, right? And so that's the beauty of mindfulness. It's like, no, be fully aware. Like, yes, there are lots of thoughts. Sometimes there are thoughts that come and go. There's sometimes and giving it your awareness, then you can let it in, and not judging it, right? So you know what, I'm sitting here and I'm trying to focus on my breathing, and so I'm just going to take some deep breaths. My intention is to focus on my breathing, and then I start thinking about the things that I didn't do today, or the things that I have to do later. And so if my intention is for mindfulness, I'm going to focus on my breath, and I'm going to say, you know what, I'm going to look at these thoughts. I'm going to, be able to visualize, yes, these thoughts are there, but I'm going to give them space to be like, no, this is not what we're focusing on. So I'll let you go and let it flow, but there are some thoughts sometimes that stick with us. And that's the thing where you're like, why is that so persistent? Not judging it, acknowledge it. Yes, I see you, and I know that I have to fold these clothes later. But right now, I'm focusing on my breathing, And so it's that practice of just being in the moment, whatever that moment is. And as you focus on your breathing, because sometimes when there's so much going on, and there's so many thoughts, and there's so much other things that I could be doing, that then sometimes restricts us, and even how we're breathing, right? You could be stressed and your breathing rate is fast, or, if you're really, down, maybe it's slower, but your intention around focus on this breath. Let's take some nice deep breaths, increase your inhale and exhale. It helps. It helps you to be able to say, okay, now what is this next thing? Because I gave this attention to myself. And sometimes in focusing on your breathing, then you do a body scan and say, okay, now I need to check in with myself, because this day was busy. And now, wait a minute, I have this pain right here. Like, why is my shoulder hurt? Why is my stomach tight? Oh, because that's where I'm holding whatever tension, whatever stress, or whatever is bothering me. And being able to say, okay, as I inhale and as I exhale, I'm going to let that go, and allowing your body, yourself, that time to relax. And then, after whatever period of time, and it could be as fast as, which I will say fast, as 1 minute. It could be a interval of 1 minute But if you ever just sit there and say, I'm going to breathe for 1 minute, it seems like a lot. Like, wait a minute, we're still here? I swear it was like 15 minutes. Like, oh, that was only 30 seconds, right? So just even 1 minute to say, okay, let me set my timer. 1 minute. I'm just going to breathe, let everything be what it is. It'll be there when I get back. But let me take this time for myself. Maybe then you can increase it to 5 minutes. If it starts at 30 seconds, mindfulness is non-judgment, right? So that's okay. You go, that's where you start. And doing this, I believe it makes you a better clinician for your patients, right? Because I'm not judging it. It is what it is, right? If we are objective practitioners, I have to document what I see, not what I want it to be, not what it possibly could be, but like, no, this is what it is, objectively, non-judgmentally. And then, we're going to try. Do we want to do different? Do we want to do it another way? If not, cool. If so, all right.
Well, most healthcare clinicians tend to think of themselves as being resilient. A lot of us just go with the flow. We cope with whatever circumstances come our way, trying to balance work and life. So their schedules are already packed, and some may feel it's a waste of time taking a minute or two to do this or do that. I know it was a challenge for me before I started practicing this routinely, but after I kept, giving it a chance, I made it a part of my routine. Like once I woke up, I wake up at a certain time, I say my prayers, and I do a period of meditation, whether it's, as you said, like a body scan, or I would do like a peace meditation or a gratitude meditation, whether it's like for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, just to center myself and focus on what my day is going to be like. And at the end of the day, I do another one, where I will consider it like a sleep meditation to help me to put to sleep. And my sleep was good.
I was going to say, you're
Like,
sleeping like a baby.
yeah. Because sometimes like at the end of like a busy work day, usually prior to doing that, my mind would still be spinning, and I'll be like, oh shoot, I forgot to do this, or I need to do this, or that sort of stuff. But like after doing, and I try to make sure that my sleep meditation was like 10 to 20 minutes. I would cut the television off, unplug everything that would emit some sort of light or anything like that. So it was like completely dark. And I do that, listen to just the meditative music and just relax. And I was out. Like,
I love it.
out until my
You
alarm
wake
woke
up
me
the
up in
next
the
day like,
morning.
wait, what happened?
I was
The
good.
last thing I
was
remember
good.
was take a deep breath in, take a deep breath out, and then the alarm went off.
But it's worth it. So I mean, I know a lot of people dismiss it. As I said, I did at first, but it helps you to navigate life's challenges better. I know I can have a temper, and I know some people will probably be like you, but yes, I can have a temper, and
Girl,
you,
same. You don't
you
let the
could.
mindfulness fool you.
And we could react to things differently, and sometimes you're not aware that the things that you're holding inside of you, just the smallest incident, whether it could be with a colleague, a family member, a friend, or anything like that, could just set something off, and it totally had nothing to do with them because you didn't allow yourself to accept or do that body scan. Like, look, you're stressed at this moment, you're exhausted, you need to just take some time and relax. So I'm encouraging us, whether you're a healthcare worker, whether you're an attorney, whatever your occupation is, it's beneficial to be mindful and just center yourself and do some calmness. It helps.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it was funny when you mentioned that this all kind of started in part with helping your son. Um, because, at times I find myself doing similar things, and I'd probably say it's mindfulness activities without knowing that that's what I was doing. Um, but my son is he's emotional, probably more emotional than I am. And that in itself is a struggle, right? Because you're trying to help, in this case, my son, navigate a situation where you're accustomed to doing it a completely different way. As a man, it's not very typical. And Mo, we've had this conversation and it's come up on podcasts where, like, as a man, you're not supposed to be or show your emotion, or it's not expected of you, right? So as a man, I'm like, I got to charge through this. I got to, put that aside. I got to deal with what's in front of me. So when I have to help my son navigate situations, the easy thing is for me to kind of revert to that, like, what are you doing? Why are you crying? Or why, like kind of like suck it up type things. And the times that I've done that, it hasn't worked, right? Because that's not what he needs, or that's not how he can process things. But then there's times where I'm like, I think like, okay, Alex, like this is not you, this is him. So let's try to navigate it. So, and it's doing those things. It's like, hey, Bash, settle down, take a deep breath. Let's get it together. And then let's talk about what it is that happened, or what has you feeling this way, right? And I think that as a man, as a male, we have to be okay with dealing with our emotions and not pushing them away, not hiding them, not being afraid to show them, like, because you have to be vulnerable. Like you have to know enough about yourself to say, I'm not right at this moment.
Absolutely.
And it could be something as simple as like, man, I just had a bad day, like a patient interaction, a supervisor, whatever has got me feeling some kind of way. But then you walk home, your spouse and you just have a little, kind of like Mo said, you look at me funny type of thing, and boom, it just blew up into this big ordeal because you couldn't be true to yourself. And I think that's one of the biggest things that that I feel like we need to convey, especially as a man, to men and young men and boys and everybody. But it's okay to feel what you're feeling, right? And to talk about it, because growing up, most of us were like, nah, like you can't talk about that. You can't show that vulnerability, or you can't be soft. You can't do these things. But we're seeing in today's society, like the consequences of that, of that attitude, where people don't have an outlet. We end up with crazy things happening, or things that could have been avoided. So I think it's a great thing to do. It's very, very important that we're in tune with ourselves. I mean, the whole thing about, the stigma, we're seeing a therapist and doing those kinds of things. I think it all ties in, and I'm glad that you are bringing this out to kind of the forefront of your practice and how you're trying to spread the word, because it definitely needs to get out there, and more so as healthcare professionals, frontline workers that have been through the pandemic and dealing with this and still dealing with it. I mean, there's different parts of the country where they're still dealing with this head on, and now you throw in the abortion stuff and everything that we're dealing with society. Like, it's a part of our lives.
These hits keep coming.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's like, once you like, we have a handle, we got a plan for this, and then something else, and it's like, into what you were saying about with your son. So I have a 12-year-old and a 6-year-old, and so now even with my 6-year-old, and he's got some big emotions and lots of words to use, and it's, when sometimes we get overwhelmed, is take a deep breath, and so I'll ask him, what do you need to do? And he's like, take a deep breath. And I'm like, okay, but how many do you need? And so he'll tell you, as many as I need. right? So there's not any one number, right? And I think just giving yourself that permission, like to take a step back, because even in itself, sometimes we have that urgency of it, you have to deal with things right now and in this moment. It should be our practice to say, give me a minute. My oldest will now tell me, okay, mom, hold on, give me a minute. And I'm like, fair. I was moving too fast, right? So then that was about to cause, a nuclear explosion, or, just to say it's okay to say, I need a minute. Because, once I checked in with myself, I'm cranky. I'm feeling the impact of my day. I might just be hungry or tired. Like, what is it that I can pinpoint that with that one clash might turn this into a nuclear experience? And so it, just like with our patients and healthcare, as healthcare providers, we make recommendations for home exercise programs and what we want our patients to do, and the best way for it to be implemented is in a way that makes sense with how they live, like what their day to day looks like. And so that's where, with these mindfulness exercises, a lot of times I ended with a curious question of, how can you do this? Where can you implement this? Because you have to be able to see this, to be able to put it into action. And if it's, like Mo said, you have this consistent in the beginning of the day, at the end of the day. For some people, it's like, what? As soon as I feel my stomach tighten up, I'm going to take this deep breath and just take a pause, because I already know that's the start of me holding. And so what you also said, Alex, about knowing who you are, right? And so knowing what takes you over the edge and being honest about that, right? We are not going to make any progress if we sit here and not honor and acknowledge the truth about what our triggers are and what, how we actually present and be, like, what, I am not the most social at 7 o'clock in the morning, and that's just the truth, right? So if I know I have to be amongst lots of humans, that I have to do my work to get myself together, right? It's not somebody else's responsibility. And we have, the only person we truly can control is ourselves. So I think all of those things, and just knowing that this is a practice. And then something else that you said, Alex, was this is just part of our self work. There is absolutely no shame, and it actually should be considered, like, if therapy is what a mental health therapist, a psychologist, a counselor is what you need. Maybe mindfulness, if you're like, I tried it and that is not cutting it, and I'm still suffering or I'm still dealing with, that is absolutely what you should be seeking out as well. So this is not, one solution for the the burnout and the all of the overwhelm of this life dealing, in a pandemic, but it's part of it. Something that we can do. And then, maybe that's one piece that you can own and you can do it, but then maybe you need some support, and that's okay too. And that's absolutely should be supported in our communities. And having that dialogue, like, hey, I made this appointment with this therapist and my therapist is helping me with these things, because it shows that as humans, we're not perfect. We have, based on our lived experience, how we grew up and how we've encountered life, how we handle things, and then sometimes it's not the most effective way. And so just being able to hear somebody else give you some pointers, some tips, some strategies, can be helpful in partnership with mindfulness.
Absolutely.
I'm
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mo.
I'm I'm glad you mentioned like becoming more self-aware, and I think that's a challenge for a lot of people. Like we don't take that time to become more self-aware of things. There was one day I was like really tired, and a patient got added late to my schedule, but I still accommodated the patient. And I would always say it was fate that that patient and I met. And I remember rounded up the evaluation. He told me when I'm driving home, he asked me how far it is that I live from his house, and I said it would probably be a 30-minute drive. And he's like, "Drive home in silence." And I was like, "What?" Because I usually like to listen to my music, or I would probably listen to like a podcast or something like that. And he was like, "I want you to drive home in complete silence today." And I was like, "Okay." So I can't use a GPS because
You took it literal. He's like, you better find your way home with this paper map. Here
Yeah,
you
you
go.
better pull
Here's
out
this
your map.
atlas. Here's this atlas.
So
You had that road atlas in your car just in
yeah,
case.
well, but I did as he suggested, and it was it was surprisingly calming. I was able to relax. I'm not gonna lie, I think I got home probably close to 9 o'clock that night, and I wasn't as like worked up or um tense as I was prior to going to his house, because I try not to carry whatever emotions that I had from a previous interaction to the other person. And I know sometimes that's a struggle for clinicians as well. But um, that technique did help me, and I started incorporating that as well too whenever I sensed that I was getting tense.
Driving in between patients, driving home in with nothing on, to me is probably one of the better things that I could do for myself.
That
I mean,
yeah.
there's times where I walk out of a patient's house and really nothing to do with that patient, but just that day in general. And I'm like, you know what? Like, I'm not turning anything on. Like, I need 5, 10, or however long it's going to take me between where I'm leaving and where I'm going to kind of just give myself a chance to decompress. Because yeah, like Mo, I'm the same way. Like I'm usually have music on or stuff, and sometimes that's just so much. It's just overstimulated, and I've got so much going on in my head that I'm like, I just need to just not listen or do anything. A lot of times, my wife will kind of give me a hard time about this, is because she's like, well, you get peace and quiet. Like, because she stays home with the kids and she's with the kids most of the time. So there's a lot of times if I know I've had a stressful day and I know that my wife has had a rough day with the kids and maintaining the house and all that stuff, I'll tell myself, I'm like, all right, you're on your way home. Like, give yourself 5-10 minutes of quiet, because when you walk in, like, you got to be ready to go. Like, you got to be tag, you're in, I'm out, I need help. Like, come here. Like, you don't get to just go into the office and do your work or continue to work, as much as I try to avoid that. So yeah, it's just those periods of just inactivity, and it could, like you said, just breathing, focusing on things, acknowledging what is going on around you, but not letting it over consume you. I think is the thing. And to Mo's point earlier about being self-aware and stuff like that, I think people need to, myself included, you just need to be okay being vulnerable. And in you being vulnerable, it opens up doors, because when people see that you're vulnerable, then they're like, well, okay, so I can give you a piece of that as well. Like it's a safe space to say, oh, you go through that as well, or like you deal with that too. Can I tell you about what what's going on with me? And I think especially in like home health, like we're by ourselves all day. Like I can't go unload to a patient. Like I'm not going to tell a patient about what's on my mind. Patients like to tell us about what they're dealing with, what society and all that stuff. And personally, I try to like keep those worlds separate, because a lot of times I don't necessarily agree with the things that they may be saying and stuff like that. So I don't want to create a tense interaction. But yeah, like that vulnerability. And I just feel like a lot of us are afraid to be vulnerable, even with our family, significant others, brothers, sisters, wives, husbands, whatever the case may be. Like just being okay with being not okay, So
Yeah, and all of that. I think just being around people that are authentic, that are vulnerable, and there's varying levels of that, right? You have your inner circle where it might just be you, where you are the most honest and vulnerable in a private space, and then you have others around you that you start to share who you are, and once you own, like, look, this is me. It's not that maybe before I've held it because I didn't want to be chastised, or, I didn't want you to think away about me. But guess what? I don't care. So the things that I'm willing to share about this experience is because I know it helped me. It helped me to, be able to let it go, and to be okay with who I am. And knowing that how you make connections with other people. And, so some of this conversation around, we as healthcare providers, like, we want to always help somebody else, but we have to help ourselves first. Helping ourselves in this honest way, then you can build really authentic relationships. So then the relationships you have with other people are at a deeper level where you can continue this cycle, and it's not just all superficial stuff, because then it's more of the same. So I think just really being okay with, when I have a conversation with somebody, if they're not ready to go to that depths of that honesty and vulnerability, that's fine. But you move in different ways with different people. And, this is this mindfulness journey. I tell people, thank God for Jesus and mindfulness, because that's kind of how I've got to this place where I'm like, I can acknowledge, and I can let it go. It is what it is. You hear that phrase, it is what it is, but like at a truly deep level, like what it is, it's okay. That's what it is. Either I choose that I can accept it, or I can't. So either I'm moving into that and saying, you know what, more of that, or I can't accept this. So let me just go over here and not engage. And that's okay too.
So we are in a profession where we help people, and you're always seen as the giver or the provider. And it's a challenge for most of us in that role to say, hey, I need help, or to even accept help. I know it has been a challenge for me. And especially over the past like six weeks or so, it was like, man, you're used to being the one to give and be there and stuff like that. But when you're like knocked down and you need somebody to be like, hey, I got you, sometimes it's be like, man, I gotta get up. But you have to get to a point where you be like, yeah, I need help. And that's a challenge for a lot of people, especially black and brown women. I know Alex is probably going to say something
about this. We don't want to hold on to the superwoman trope, like I can do it all. Like, let's be honest, no, you can't. And so, kind of with that same idea and mindset of this, this strong, being this super strong person, and being this healthcare provider that you are the go-to for this, or whatever role you are in your family. It's like, if you are that person that people come to, you become, what I've heard termed as the strong friend. And so, Alex, you asked me about the evolution of like, what is creatively Meek? And so I have ideas for just what that support looks like, because sometimes we go and we do, like you said, Mo, it's like stuff has to get done. We're just going to do it. Right. And not even thinking, not that you're not wanting to ask for help, you just keep going. And so within Creatively Meek, I want to just say, like, look, this space is here for that strong person. Like, I already know you probably need the support and help, and maybe you will or won't ask for it, but you can just dial in, tap in. Here are some resources that will be beneficial to you. And then it just continues to provide a support. So stay tuned for lots of different things for different people, for different spaces, to come. So
I'm definitely glad you're doing that, because a lot of times we wait until it's too late, because you always hear people say after the fact, always check in on your strong friends. And I was mentioning it to someone, it's like, people keep things so hidden when they're going through their lowest points or their weakest points. Yeah. And it comes as a shock to people after, like, wow, I didn't know this person was going through that. Or I didn't know this person was ill. Or I didn't know that person was sick. But you get so caught up, and it's like checking on people you haven't heard from in a while, or you haven't seen in a while, because something may be going on, but just give them that space to let them be like, okay, yeah, I have something to share with you, because sometimes we are not ready to say all that's happening.
Yeah, and I think that's part of, oh, sorry, just
No, no,
holding
go ahead.
space, because even if the person's not willing to share what they're going through, just knowing that you're checking in, right? And so for me, what I try to do is, because sometimes that happens where you're like, oh, I was thinking about this person and I didn't reach out. And then you hear like, oh, something was going on. So I try to be aware of, like, if somebody crosses my mind, if I have my phone near me, I'm just, let me send them a text message like, hey, how are you? What's going on? Not that you're probing like, what's going on? Something's going on because you crossed my mind. Like, no, it's just, hey, I thought about you and what's up, right? Maybe it leads to a conversation like a phone call, FaceTime, like, well, however it is you communicate. But I think just really just holding space for people, and that check-in. And it doesn't have to be, anything probing, but just to know, hey, somebody was thinking about me, and that's pretty dope.
And I think I would add to that, to be kind of, for lack of a better word, persistent, but not necessarily in the way like you mentioned, just probing, but just, hey, how are you? And trying to be more involved with that. And the reason I say that is I've had two incidents here in the last couple months of individuals that I'm familiar with who have gone through some things, but it's not anything you would have ever known,
Right.
right? And just the occasional sporadic, hey, what's going on, sometimes just isn't enough, and like you
Right.
said, yeah, that person may not want to share, they may not feel comfortable enough to share, but they know that there is at least one person that cares, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it only takes
Yeah.
one. It only takes one to help somebody,
Yeah.
and to let them know that they're not alone, and that there's different resources, whatever they may
Mm-hmm.
need. There's a way to find out. Like I always tell
For
people,
sure.
is and this goes for patients as well. I'm like, if there's a problem, let me know. And if I don't know the answer, I
Mm-hmm.
will try to find the answer.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
whatever it is that we need to do, just open up, communicate, let me know so that we can try to figure this out for you. No matter how small you may think it is, or how big you may think it is. Like, you may be like,
Mm-hmm.
I've got this big problem. I don't want to burden anybody else with it, but I'm like, bring it on. Because for you, it may be a big thing. For maybe it's just something small that can be
Mm-hmm.
easily,
Yeah,
fixed. So,
that's true.
you know,
And if it is massive, you just hold space and be like, "Whoa, that was a doozy." You right,
yeah, let me help you carry it.
you
You know what I'm saying?
know,
Like,
right,
let me
right.
give you a
Like, let me
hand
just,
to carry that.
and I know I'm going to check in on you every day because, whoo, that's a heavy load. And I think,
Yeah.
knowing for everybody you interact with, they just make the assumption, right? We don't like to assume because we know what they
Mm.
say about that. But if you just assume everybody you're talking to and interacting with is going through something that you have no idea, it could be, like you said, Alex, really big or really small, but you know what? Let me bring some kindness forward because I just don't know. And I don't want to be the cause of you going over the edge, right? Like, let me be the cause of this support. And so, I feel like I am team hype in that way where I'm like, let me support you. Like, let me lift you up. Like, I can't not do that. If you were in my circle and I'm texting you, like, you'll be like, we can really, I was like, oh, how many words of affirmation do you need? What kind of support do you need? Because that's just, I know that I did that for me, right? So when I say these things start with self, it started with self. Like, okay, you know what? Be that strong friend, didn't have that affirmation. And this is no sob story. Like this, I'm not saying that there was nobody checking in, but I'm just saying, there are moments in time where you're like, it's silent and I need some input and nobody's available. All right, let me affirm myself, let me encourage myself. And so then it just became a habit, and now it's like, okay, if I know that helped me, let me just, it's out of the abundance of the heart, right? Like I could just come out and just be like, hey, what do you need? Like we're gonna find a positive light, like you said, Alex. You could think it's massive and I may truly agree with you, or I might be like, hey, I get that it's big, but we can support each other, right? Or I know somebody, or let's just figure this out together. So I think that part of it too, is how we interact and how we deal with other humans that are all going through a journey. You know, being kind is the least that you could do.
Absolutely, and I'm glad you brought up the point because I was actually working my way to getting there to the whole team hype thing. That to me is awesome. You know, because I've always felt like, you know, we all need a cheerleader. We all need somebody. You know, when you say hype, like for me, it's like I think of a boxer coming out to the ring and they got a friend. You know, nowadays it's a rapper or whatever the case may be. But it's somebody that's bringing you up to get you ready to face whatever it is you're going to face, you know, and to have somebody there to lift you up and to say, hey, you got this. Today's going to be an awesome day. You're going to kill it. Or, you know, like I always, you know, I look through memes and sometimes I there's periods where I'll go through them where like I share them more because they're just more positive words of affirmation. Sometimes I'm like, man, people don't want to hear this. People don't want to see this. So let me just, but whatever the case may be, it's like, you know, like the one that always sticks out with me is something positive. It's like you survived your worst day. Like that to me is something when I'm having a rough day. And, you know, and I'm a very glass half full kind of person. You know, my wife's always like, man, like there's no negative in you. Like, you know, that I'm like,
come on, team hype. Yes, Alex.
I'm just not wired that way. Because, you know, I always say like it takes just as much effort to be positive as it does negative. But the positive side, it gives you it makes you feel a little bit better. So why not spend that energy there? But, you know, and that's the thing, is just being the supporters to everybody, you know, and I find myself a lot doing it for my wife because, man, as Mica, you know, and Mo, you've experienced it on the side, like raising kids, being a mother, like that's not easy. And on my best day, I can't do what she does. Like I just can't. You know, there's times where I want to help her and my kids want nothing to do with me. Right? Like they just want mom.
Not the mama.
Yeah, exactly. They just want mom. And she's looking at me like, I'm like, babe, I'm trying to help, but they don't want me. Like they don't want me.
You still have to be in the trenches.
Yeah.
You still have to be
You're
in
like,
the
but
trenches.
I got this foot massage when they go to sleep. As soon as they knock out, I got you.
I'm like, I wake up like I feel like I'm her hype man. Like she coming down the ring, gonna get step in the ring, and I'm like the one rapping and singing because I'm like, let's go. You can do this. You know?
Right.
But we all need that. We all need that. And whether it's in person, in your relationship, through social media, even what I think Mo and I are trying to do here is to help others, lift others, let people know like you're not the only one going through this. You're not the only one that's experienced this, you know, and if we can help just one person, then I think we're killing it, you know. So
you're killing the game. Yep. I love it. So proud of you guys. But no, that's true.
Thanks,
you know, knowing you're not alone, you know, and so my work with Ujima Institute and working with students and doing Mindful Mondays, that in itself, from the feedback that we get from the students is, you know what? I now know I'm not alone. I now know that there are other people that look like me that are going through a similar experience because of this community. And so I think just the value of that vulnerability, that willingness to support and hype, because it's real easy to be stingy, right? Like our nature is to be like, mine, you know, no, I'm not even gonna show you how I did this. Guess what? I covet nothing. Let me show you, let me share, let me get, like, because I've, once again, not a stop story, but you have been in, you know, if you've been on this journey, you've been in environments where you're like, wow, that was not very supportive or encouraging. I don't want to be like that. You know, like the lessons that I've learned, if I could just share that with somebody freely, whether they accept it or not, but like, let me just say, look, this is how you can navigate this. This is how you can do this. Or I have had something similar happen. And then it's like, oh, okay, well, what did you do? You don't have to do what I did and how I did it. No, but just to know that you're not, like Alex, you hit it. You are not alone. And I think just where we can do things differently, right? If we look at the history, if we look at how things are done, and if everybody does things the same, and we're not willing to pivot and make a change, then we're only going to have more of the same and moving forward, right? And we're trying to transform society. We're trying to make this difference. We're trying to be the difference, right? So we have to do something different.
So how would you suggest like we break this mindset? Like a lot of patients, especially black and brown patients, feel that as clinicians, their pain is being dismissed. Like nobody wants to listen to their story. I've had numerous patients, especially the ones 65 and over. Like when I ask, "Hey, how are you feeling today?" They're like, "Nobody cares. Nobody, you know." I'm gonna say I'm okay because nobody cares to listen, and if they hear anyway, they're gonna say something about it. So people don't really want to talk about what they're
Mm-hmm.
going through because they feel like it's going to be dismissed and no one is really going to help them. So, what suggestions do you have for clinicians to be more mindful, to listen and not be dismissive of
Mm-hmm.
someone saying, "Hey, I have like 9 out of 10 pain," but they can still sit there calmly
Mm-hmm.
and tell you like, look, I'm down. Pain could be
Mm-hmm.
mentally,
Mm-hmm.
emotionally, spiritually
Mm-hmm.
draining. It doesn't always have to be
Mm-hmm.
physical.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it starts with what you said you observed before, right? You have to get at their level, right? And I think just one, we have an agenda of what we want to accomplish with our patients, and we got to get through this list of things, or we have, what we feel like we need to do. But once again, that 1 minute timer, it does not go as fast as you think. So if you could just take a minute, or two, and really just sit with your patient and really just give them that eye contact, give them that reassurance that you are there. And maybe over time it's something that you just have to build that rapport because of the history of what they've been through, right? You have patients, you said they're 65 and older. That's a whole lot of time being dismissed by the healthcare system. So our me wanting to make a change and me willing to sit with it, I have to acknowledge that it may not happen in this one setting, but I'm planting these seeds of this is something different, right? I do want to hear what you have to say. I will sit at your level. I will interact with you. I will acknowledge and repeat back what you've said to me, and move forward in then providing that patient education as to say, okay, I hear what you're saying. This is what, that return demonstration. And now these are some things that I think could be going on. Let's try, this, or let me educate you on that. And just really what we should be doing as healthcare providers, advocating for our profession in a way that we are giving them lots of information about how we can help, and not not just about this exercise, but let me explain to you this process. Let me Your pain, or your diagnosis, or how your diagnosis is affecting your mobility, taking little bits of time to just sit and explain and talk and hold space. And if your patients are upset, we know how to just kind of help de-escalate and things like that. So I think knowing that you may not solve it in that one setting, and that's okay, not being forceful about whatever it you want it to be, but just acknowledging, yeah, you probably, I'm sorry you've had that experience with healthcare providers, right? Sometimes it starts with that. And I would like for this experience to be different, so let me lean in and tell me what you feel like you haven't been able to say to somebody else.
Like I know sometimes it could be challenging in the home health setting where Alex and I practice in, but like if you're at a hospital or a SNF or outpatient clinic, I was reading a study that they did about bedside manner. Even though a physician who was standing spent a longer time with a patient, they perceived that the physician who sat with them at the bedside and spoke to them at eye level, even if it was like 5 minutes shorter than the physician who was standing, they perceived the bedside manner much better of the person who was sitting at eye level with them and talking calmly to them. So I know sometimes it could be a challenge for us in the home health setting to sit in certain spaces,
Right. Right.
treating patients. But those little things, like being mindful of that. I mean, like I saw Dr. Van Hoos kneel at one time to talk to someone who was sitting like on a sofa, and I was like,
Yeah.
man,
Yeah.
she doesn't have mega knees. So I was like,
Right. You
oh,
gotta meet people where they are.
yeah. So that
And
that in itself,
yeah,
yeah.
I'm tall, and so I'm a pediatric PT, so that it is like that's my I gotta sit down. I had to sit down and
Okay.
be eye level with my kiddos. And so that's, some of that is where that comes from. I cannot stand up here and be like, okay, kid down there. No, we got to get it at this eye level and meet people where they are in the vastness of what that means, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Meet people where they are.
Okay.
Absolutely. Um, any last words or anything that you want to kind of leave our audience with?
Wow, last words. We talked about so many good things. I think please follow me on the socials. There is more to come from Creatively Meek. This summer is a time of really going into this creative space for me, and so there will be opportunities and offerings, mindfulness exercises, and just a variety of things to come. So I think just stay tuned. So please follow. But just words to leave with the listeners. It really starts with yourself. And if you can't be kind to yourself, it's going to be hard to be kind to others. If you can't be vulnerable with yourself, it's going to be hard to be vulnerable with others. And I think just really taking the time and the intention to get to know yourself and be consistent with how you want to move forward will allow you to then be this person that you want to be. And it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to reach out. And, maybe if someone does text you to check in with you, it could be because they needed a check in too, right? And so just really be about this encouragement. I feel like I'm a mindful encourager. I am team hype. And so people need more
Sugan
of
as
that. This
well.
world needs more of that. We definitely, what the world needs now is love, sweet love, right? That song.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Mica, thank you very much. Thank you
Thank
very, very much.
you. This hour went by fast. It was fun.
Time flies when you're having fun, but
I appreciate you
Mo
guys.
and I are very appreciative of your time to come and be
Yes.
with us and kind of share your ideas, your thoughts. Very excited to see what Creatively Meek continues to grow and to offer. And once you get a little bit bigger, we'll bring you on for round 2 and let you know. Tell us
Definitely.
more about it. Tell us more about it.
Okay, so you said round 2, and I already went to that boxing ring, so I need like some hype, some theme music.
We'll get you. We'll get you it's funny. Like when
I'm gonna come out with a roll.
Little quick story for before we go was kind of the hype song and stuff like that. Is I coached my son's t-ball, and like after the second game, I was like, you know what? They need like some music or something. In the big leagues, everybody comes up to bat. They get a song. So my wife sent like a group text like, hey, I need a song for each one of your kids. And man, the kids loved it. But it's just something so simple, right? A song puts you in a certain frame of mind to do what you're about to do. And, to hear what these kids were picking, it was kind of funny and kind of like, okay, like you got some little bit of swag to you with what you're picking, but yeah, absolutely. The hype is real. The hype is needed. So again, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time.
Yes. And as you support others, hashtag team hype. So it just continues to become contagious and part of what we do, right? Because social media can be a dark place. I've cultivated my feed. I'm like, what darkness? It's just fun and hype over here. But, the more people see it, just like how we need to be vulnerable, the more they'll be like, okay, that actually is not so bad. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you again.
All right. Well, everybody have a good night. Thank you. For myself, it was good to be back. And everybody follow, comment, let us know your thoughts. And yeah, we'll see you next time.
All right. Don't forget to subscribe.